we take pride in satisfying every customer's financial needs.
Ngaro na la wato kuma ta baki asira alinga da fo ko nyi founding kila
hey elafta maboro la bank kalpo efa igiso eseo na yuna jang ibadin kiyato kati yuna wallet ibe falindiro ke kan sandiri nyat
ni la yuna wallet o si muna fanno tulo yabo mano country ani fenja ma jama isi sanno la yona wallet o kono yalla kamo soto ila wallet o kono
alkana la konda no tay ka bi yuna wallet anatan tolle mukan na balwo fanondi abe sono yaren ko bulu podo ne la mobile scan yo science ise maboro ke wato men diate
ko be sandro ke fongole ba ko ba ke kan dimbalem isi ñu lonko e sandro se yona enterprise wato wati ani la yona wallet o la ibe lan kamo soto kay la wallet o kono
alina nga kafun nanyi yuna dimbayal tan kasandiro ke yuna biti foto alinga kata nyin ko kentat na sura fa lolu si sandiro kije se ma boro fanan keje
moro jun diana nyum ko di mabal ni kadeda
Welcome to another edition of our show. It's been a while, I've been away, and I'm glad to be back on the show just to look at what is happening in the country. I've been away, and I don't know what is really happening. So that's why I had to bring two of the great economists to update you on what is really happening. But you know, a lot of people always say we should do the local languages because these are important conversations, especially when we're talking about the economy. I think it's good for us to talk to the local people so they understand. Because if the minister himself is telling us our debt is in distress, I think the government people need to know what is really the status of our economy. And to discuss this, I have Dr. Gajigo here. Always, good to have you back on the show. Welcome back to the show. And of course, Mr. Manneh, always great to have you on the show. I was jealous though when you were on other platforms talking about the economy whilst I was away, but this is always a different level.
This is my home. So.
It's always a different level. Today we want to look at the economy. But first, I think what I saw was this: when the minister tabled the budget at the National Assembly, there was some rows from. I saw from Alhaji Estabo saying it was unconstitutional because the minister is supposed to table the budget 60 days before the end of the year.
Yes.
Why did they table it at this point? Why was it not tabled 60 days before?
Because one, the minister doesn't control his budget. He needed funding for things that he was not in control of.
Okay.
And he wouldn't finish his preparations in time, one. Two, he was traveling all the time out of the country. He didn't spend enough time in the country to do what is required to be able to submit this. But the more important thing is that he was in serious discussions with the IMF for a salary increase and other things. Because initially they wanted 100% salary increase. And the Bretton Woods Institution told them, you don't have the money to do it. So you cannot do that because there are some targets they need to meet to continue with the extended credit facility program negotiations, so they could not do it. So eventually, it came down to 75%. And he was negotiating 75%, but still, they told him you cannot finance it because you have to finance it from the domestic resources, domestic tax resources. And he doesn't have the capacity to do that. So eventually, they settled for a 30%. So those negotiations were back and forth. I think the IMF was here till end of October. When they could not finish it, the IMF went back to the US. He flew to the US to continue the negotiations. That's what delayed the whole thing. They will spin it. They will tell you anything, but that is the reality. They didn't have the money. And this was the guy who, in September, I think September 23rd, his interview with The Point said that the economy is doing fine. The debt to GDP ratio dropped from 85% to 72 or 72%.
Yeah.
And that it's on a downward trajectory, everything is fine. Just to tell us a few days ago that we are in virtual debt distress. And it's not virtual debt distress, we are in debt distress. That's what he needs to say. So he tried to spin it, and he couldn't. And he ended up telling us that, well, budget support is not coming, the assistance is not what they expect, etc. And all of that happened for a reason. They happened for a reason. That reason is the incompetence, the mismanagement, and the corruption that is riddling this country and this government. That's what's behind the whole thing. And that's why he couldn't submit it. And the Constitution says that. It was 30 days before.
Yeah.
And their own MP, I think is...
Something Jawara.
I think it's not... Yes, anyway, one of the NPP MPs proposed that they move it to 60 days.
Oh, 60 days,
and that's what's required.
To give them more time.
You need time
Yeah.
to go through this. Because the NAMs, you have to say, are not very much familiar
They need time
with
to look at these things, yeah.
They lack capacity themselves. So they need to sit with subject matter specialists to explain some of these things to them so that they know what they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
So they need time for that. If you give them 30 days, they don't have the time. So they asked for 60 days. And that was a constitutional amendment. Because that's not an entrenched clause, so they could amend it in Parliament.
Yeah.
Now, that was done last year. This year, he deliberately flouted that provision. And to compound it all, when he did, Alaji S. Dabo came out and said, no, you cannot do this. You are outside the deadline. And the speaker, an unelected officer, sits there and he absolves the minister from a violation of the Constitution. The minister violated the Constitution.
Yeah.
She should have been sanctioned for that. But an unelected member sat there and said, yeah, he violated the Constitution, but he will apologize and we'll move on. Really? He can excuse a violation of the Constitution sitting there as a speaker of in the legislative body that is supposed to be the custodian of those laws. They are the people who adopt those laws. They are the people who have voted the amendment of the Constitution. And this guy violates it. But in a nutshell, that is what is behind the whole thing. Our economy is in the doldrums. The minister doesn't control much. He is kept afloat by the Bretton Woods institutions, so they dictate the terms. And this is a harbinger for the more difficult times ahead.
And it brings to, if that is what really happened, negotiating with the IMF and others, if we want to increase salaries by 100% or 50%, why must the IMF dictate that? Why? If that's the case, why must the IMF dictate that? Is this not our budget, Gambia? Why would the international partners have a say on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's they should not. That's the answer. IMF easily gets a bad rap, but no country that is doing well ends up before the IMF. IMF doesn't get to dictate what you are going to do in your budget, or if you decide to increase your budget, your allocation to any sector by any amount. If your economy is doing well and you are managing it well, you won't do it well. It's sort of like, let's think of an analogy. If you are not doing well, you are seriously sick, you go to a doctor. Not only will they give you medication, sometimes they will prescribe certain lifestyle changes.
Yes.
You can eat this,
don't eat this.
Don't eat this. Drink this, don't drink this.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy to go and blame, it's sort of like blaming the doctor and say, the doctor is dictating this man's life. But if you didn't have to go in the first place, no doctor will come to your house and tell you you cannot eat this, you cannot drink this. So as Manneh said, the root of this problem, and this has been building up over the years, you know, is that there has been economic mismanagement. Significant, not just minor, significant economic mismanagement by this government at every level. But particularly, you know, it's, I was also reading what the Minister of Finance was saying about the, you know, the budget situation, you know, how we are in debt distress, and thinking about, mentioning the fact that, you know, some ministries are not reporting their revenue, the tax base is not large enough, you know, and a few other things. But the problem, he's talking about problems that are directly under his control, that are under the direct control, you know, of this very government. So to talk about it as if you are outside of the system when you are part and parcel of it is just mind-blowing. I mean, it's the level of self-unawareness and the incompetence that is being shown, it's just mind-boggling. So let's talk about tax base. The legal basis for tax reform is the GRA Act. But still now we are operating under the GRA Act of 2004. This government has been in power close to a decade. They didn't see it fit to reform the tax code. You know, public finance management. This is the Ministry of Finance is supposed to be in charge of you know, sources of revenue into the government and expenditure. It's not just Ministry of Finance, but economic planning as well. Yet this wasn't done. It's as if you, the author of the problem yourself, you are going about. It's like what this, I mean, Ahmad Ba did during that so-called national dialogue. Stood before us complaining about life in the country.
It's not part of the ministry government.
So it's the same thing. So where we are right now, under normal circumstances, IMF shouldn't come and tell you. Because what, if your economy is doing very well, you are generating tax revenue as you should. It is up to you to spend as you please. Nobody, World Bank, IMF, ADB, nobody can tell you what to do with it. Right now, that money, they don't have it. They knew they didn't have it, but yet they stood before the Gambian people and promised what they couldn't deliver. And they were planning on using money that was going to come from IMF or some other place. Because the money that they are generating here is not enough because the economy is not doing very well. So IMF simply told them, the assistance we are giving you cannot go into this increase. You know.
So, but so two things here. The minister a few months ago told us that the economy, we are doing very well. And the president during this tour is telling us how he took over and where he was and where we are today. And all the development projects, achievements, what he has done in 7 years, Jawara combined with Jammeh have not done in 52 years. That's what he said. I don't know how we can verify that. I don't know. But Jawara le sielote. Kabo banjun fo base woda madam maka wo sielote. It's more than whatever Barrow has done his entire 7 years. We all know that. But that's what he said. But my thing is, I heard the minister say that there are some expenditures that have been budgeted in 2024 they have not been able to do because they don't have money. I heard that. I heard the minister say government up to today they are struggling with international donors budget support. That is what hold them up. Up to now they're not able to finance some of the things that they want to do. Now these are serious issues. What is the situation of our economy right now, if you want to sum it up? What is the situation of our economy?
It's very dire. It's a crisis. When you are at the point where you have to go and negotiate with IMF just for a salary increase, that's long overdue. Let's be clear about one thing. Even if this 100% salary increase was approved and is financed, it would still not be enough to to cover for the erosion of the purchasing power that the average civil servant has been experiencing. What you have to do, you have to remember our inflation rate. You know, it's very high. So it's been significant in double digits for almost, you know, since this government came to power. If you add all of that, that is going to be way, even if you were to give a 200% salary increase, you know, the loss of purchasing power that your average worker has lost over time, you're not going to make up for it. So now, even this 70 to 30% range that we are talking about is not going to materialize. So the economy is in crisis. So in the current budget, about a third of it is going to go into debt service.
Yes, 29%.
Yes. Last year, it was about a quarter.
Yeah.
At this rate, in 2 years, we'll be in a situation where more than half of our budget will go into debt service.
Wow.
When you are approaching that level, it's not as, you know, as Manneh said here, it's not a question of we are approaching debt, distress. We are in it.
Yeah.
There are just, you know, this is just a matter of just technical terms where you have to cross a certain threshold. But all of the qualitative features that you have in a debt situation, we have it. But to make matters worse, all of the contributing factors to the situation we are in, this government is continuing it as we speak.
And worsening it.
Yeah. The misallocation, when you look at the budget, the misallocation in these sectors, spending, spending money in places where they are not needed, where they are not generating revenue, you know, making sure that you are not increasing the tax base, but you are actually narrowing the tax base and being, you know, punitively raising the tax revenue from a very small segment, you know, because you are only focused on short-term things, you know, making expenditures that are only politically convenient but have no regards to development. If you look at our energy sector today, where the expansion of electricity and other things are taking place, you know, it is not being sequenced correctly. So all of the factors that have brought us here, you know, it's just not a matter of just, you know, borrowing and spending money. It's where you are spending the money on. So this misallocation, the lack of prioritization, is what got us here. But if you look at this budget, you compare it with the previous budget, the same problems that you can talk about the previous 2, 3, 4 budget is the same problems that you have with the current budget. So basically, it's like everyone is aware we are running off the cliff, and instead of slowing down and reassessing what got us to this point, they are basically increasing the speed.
Yeah.
So the economic situation is, we are in a crisis point right now. And it looks like the president and his ministers are living in an alternate reality because he's going around the country claiming that things are fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he doesn't understand or whether he refused to face reality.
He doesn't live the reality. He is living in a bubble, and his ministers are doing the same thing. You see, in 2021, when we were doing the campaign for the presidency, I was here, interviewed here, and I made a political statement at the time. I was with Sana Jawara, and I said, from this year to 2026, if you elect Barrow, every year the economic situation is going to get worse. Go to 2021, Kerr Fatou, December, and you check my political statement, you'll find it there. You could see the writing was on the wall. And it's getting worse because this government is adamant in continuing with the mismanagement, with the misappropriation of resources, with the poor prioritization, or lack of poor prioritization, in fact, at all. There's no prioritization.
Is it because the government is concentrating on infrastructure development? Because, you know, most of the projects that they are doing, when you look at them, they are not bringing, projects that are bringing money. Like,
see, you don't build infrastructure just for the sake of building infrastructure.
The president wants to build a lot of roads. He said he built more roads than Jawara and Jammeh combined. He's building bridges, he's building schools, he's building more classrooms, 10 classrooms a week. They said,
even him, that's MRC.
I know that is MRC Foundation, but that's what they're claiming. So all of these projects, the kind of projects they are fixation on, they are not bringing revenue. So is that the reason why we are in this situation?
You see, it is part of the problem. But you don't build infrastructure just for the sake of building infrastructure. Infrastructure is supposed to be a facilitator and an enabler. Infrastructure would be great if you use it for trade facilitation. But you only trade when you have something to trade. We do not even have anything to trade. Infrastructure, you build a road infrastructure, you move goods from point A to point B, you make your market much more easily accessible, and your goods, farm gate prices are good, and then you can move them and sell them at a competitive price, all of that is good. Today we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. If we were to develop our agricultural sector and build up the economy based on that, move towards industrialization and processing of agricultural produce, we have the entire African continent to sell to. And we could be competitive, and we could be making more money. If we did that, the widening of the tax base that this minister is talking about, which he doesn't seem to understand for whatever reason or is being deliberate, then you would really widen the tax base, because you'll create more employment, you'll create more jobs in the agricultural sector, the processing sector, the transport sector. In every sector in the country, agriculture has that knock-on effect. So you'll create employment in many sectors in the country. And each of those people working in those sectors will pay tax. The road tax will increase. The movement of goods transportation, you will buy more energy for your vehicles. And every liter of fuel you buy here is taxed. Instead, the tax base will increase, the more money will be coming in without having to increase the tax level. What they are doing today is taxing Gambians into poverty. Because you increasingly taxing a small group of people.
Yeah.
And you taxing them into poverty. If you widen the tax base by creating employment, by creating facilities, then you increase the number of people who are able to pay tax. You collect more tax from more people at a lower rate, and the economy starts moving, it's becoming buoyant. But now, what we are doing, you will see very soon tax evasion setting in. Because the taxes are so high, people start evading tax.
If we cannot pay,
Okay? So the few who are able to pay are being paid, are paying so much tax they are getting into poverty. Well, when they are telling you that the consumption rate, the consumer, spending in the country is increasing, how is it going to increase? People have less money in their pockets, less disposable income. How is consumer spending increasing? It's not a reality.
It's not.
So they are living in, as Ousman said, in alternative reality. Because this Barrow is getting $150,000 a day for food. He's getting $500,000 a month for salary. He's got everything free.
Oh my God.
So he doesn't know what's happening. When electricity goes off for the rest of the country, he has electricity in State House. He doesn't know what fuel costs. He doesn't know what food costs. So he doesn't have those realities to look at. So if you choose to close yourself to that, it's very easy. And that is the reality. So these people care about themselves and their small families, and the rest of the Gambians can die. Because even if you increase salaries by 100% for the civil servant, what are you talking about? 50,000 people, roughly.
Yeah.
The rest of the Gambian population have no access to increased income. So by increasing salaries by so much, the inflationary pressures are going to go up. Inflation is going to shoot through the roof. So the civil servant, the little amount of money you're giving them will be eaten up by inflation. So what about the ordinary Gambian who doesn't have a salary? What about the poor farmer who sells his groundnuts once a year? He has income once a year.
Yeah.
And you're telling him, I'm not going to increase your groundnut prices, last year's price, what I'm going to pay you. Just by the depreciation of the dollar, the farmer who sold his groundnuts last year for $38,000 is receiving much less in value this year by the simple mechanical effect of the depreciation of the dollar. He's receiving much less for his groundnuts this year than last year. Okay? What about the rest of the Gambians who are unemployed? How do they survive? So their living is going to get more and more difficult in this country. And this government is not recognizing that. It's not addressing that. It's talking of some small group of people. The civil servants, yes, deserve a pay rise. What about the rest of the Gambians?
The broader Gambian.
Yeah. So that is the realities we are facing in this country.
Right now let's look at the budget. Yeah.
Now, I also want to say the earlier point you raised about infrastructure. Actually, talking
infrastructure,
about the bridge and the road.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to let's examine that premises in the first place.
Okay.
Which bridges is Barrow talking about?
He built one in Basse.
No, the bridges that were built in Basse.
Yeah.
And in Fatoto, those were built by the Chinese pure grant. So he cannot claim that is from the budget.
Yeah.
The Senegambia bridge was built by ADB and completed before he actually.
So he has not built any single one from our resources.
So if you look exactly, so he cannot claim that the expenditure on those resources, on those infrastructure, is one of the contributing factors to our deficit problem or our debt problem. It's not true. The biggest road project that we have done so far, that this government has done so far, is this OIC road.
The OIC, yeah.
Is that funding from the budget or is it from OIC?
Some governments chipped in some money, right?
Yeah, but all of the areas that are supposed to be financed, either the project wasn't done well, wasn't done on time, was being done over budget. To the extent that the government is chipping in some, it's due to the mismanagement of the government itself.
Okay.
So the roads you look at, there are a few roads. One of them is in Sabak Sanjal. This Hakalan road is being done.
Road, yeah.
But we are not talking about, he's starting.
And the
here.
Banjul Road project. The Banjul, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, but the Banjul Road project, let me tell you about how the financing of the Banjul Road project didn't come from the budget.
It didn't?
No. Just before that, there was a payment from BP, British Petroleum.
Okay.
When they broke the agreement they were supposed to do for drilling an exploratory well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, about $35 million US. Yeah. That money there was a supplement in that very year. There was a supplementary budget in October of that year by the then Minister of Finance, Mamboure Ndiaye. A supplementary budget was brought before the National Assembly. That money from the 35 million from British Petroleum pretty much paid well ahead of time the money that was actually
supposed to be for the Banjul project.
Banjul project.
Wow.
So when you think about it, I mean, the idea that this guy, he's doing a significant amount, there's no, I'm not denying that he hasn't done infrastructure or road projects.
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah.
But the idea that those road projects is what accounts for the debt situation we are in.
I think I'm the one thinking maybe that's the reason.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you know what?
They may want to imply that, so it's good for people to know that cannot be used as an excuse for the current debt situation. The reason why we are in the current predicament is due to mismanagement, not to any investment. Because infrastructure, even if right now we don't see any returns, it will generate social and economic returns.
Yeah.
It is not a bad investment. But this government cannot claim our current debt problem is due to a significant amount of infrastructural investment that they are doing. It's not the case.
No.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Ousman is being modest about that. That $35 million payment it happened because he and a few other people helped with the ADB's African Legal Support Facility to work with British Petroleum and make them pay that amount. He was behind
I heard
the
about
project.
that, yeah.
I mentioned that several times, and he's not saying that.
Yeah,
was
you
what
said it
happened.
here on one of our shows, yeah.
And what's more, during that period, we had the possibility to do so much more in terms of it was renegotiated.
Renegotiated, yeah, they renegotiated.
And before that one, in 2017, we sent one of the director of the African Legal Support Facility, Steve Karangizi, and a few other people came here. We pushed them to come here to renegotiate our oil deals. They came, and up to now, the oil is nowhere. Okay? So all of those things happened. But the infrastructure development you have, the other thing we need to underscore is that extremely over budget.
That's what I was coming to.
And the amount of corruption that took place. When Ibrahim Silla tells us that he built the the Battle Harding Road for a total of $6.8 million per kilometer.
Yeah, that's...
$150 million to do 22 kilometers.
Yes.
That's $6.8 million per kilometer. That's a world record.
Yeah. That's nowhere around.
The rule of the thumb is $1 million per kilometer of highway.
And we are saying what?
6.8 million.
Wow.
That's almost 7 times more.
In some countries, it will be a criminal offense.
Yeah.
Because basically, you've allowed your country to be fleeced.
They fleeced the country.
Yeah.
So in that, just by that, we have lost $128 million on the construction of that road.
Wow.
It should have cost $22 million. It cost, according to him, $150 million. So take up the 22 from 150, $128 million disappeared in thin air. Why? So these infrastructure projects are white elephants which are going to come to haunt us because we're going to pay for those projects. They are not grants, they are loans. The 50 kilometers OIC road that we got from the OIC, it is not a grant, it's a loan. And those roads are all gone bad. People in Brufut, for example, have been calling and say, come and look at the gutters they are doing.
Yeah.
They haven't even cleaned the gutters. They've got wood and cement and blocks in the gutter, and they're closing the gutters on that. It's going to cause flooding in people's homes. The road surfaces are going.
Yeah, Brufut is
so the infrastructure development is substandard and overpriced.
Wow. That's crazy. Now let's look at the budget itself.
Okay.
52.9 billion, I think. And we are just, domestically, we're able to get 32, I think. So
37.
we're 37. We're sort of about 11, kind of, right?
13.
13 that is supposed to come from the budget support.
Yeah.
Now, last year, the budget support did not come. Again, we're budgeting the same. In some areas, we're budgeting more. Let's look at the budget. You've seen the budget.
Yes.
Let's look at key areas. I know a lot of us want to know the president's office. I want to know, is Barrow still getting the 150,000 for the pants?
Well, let's put it this way.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's my entire...
The budget, when you look at it, listen, if you look at the sources of the fact that you are making your budget,
Yeah.
and then a significant chunk of it, you are saying, well, we are expecting this budget support, it didn't come, as if they are to blame. You cannot blame, you cannot come here as a leader of a country, a government, a government that has been in power for 2 terms,
Yeah.
and you are still basically blaming your development partners for not giving you a handout. You know, you are supposed to make the economy work so that you don't depend on them.
Yeah.
But you also have to ask yourself, why is it the budget support not forthcoming?
Why is it not coming?
Yes.
That is fundamental.
Because when your development partners lose confidence in you, in how you are managing. They don't want to help.
Yeah.
If they have confidence in you, believe me, they want to give you more money than you can handle.
Yeah.
Places like Rwanda don't go and talk about, oh, budget support wasn't forthcoming. The donors are like running over themselves to assist. Because people want to see the money they are putting into something, whether they are individuals or government, they want to make sure that it's actually leading to something. And this is not, you know, I've mentioned this in my previous analysis of the budget. The confidence that development partners, whether they are bilateral or multilateral donors, the confidence that they have in us, it's going down because they have seen the money is not being spent as it should. The country's economy is not doing very well. So they are not as eager to assist as they should. So that right there, that tells you, you know, whenever you hear a government talking about, oh, the support I was expecting is not coming, ask them, why is it that
the support is not coming?
The support is not coming. It means it has to do something with, it has something to do with their performance. You know, or lack of it. When you come to the budget, it becomes quite clear why nobody will have confidence in this group of people managing, you know, whether it's Barrow or the Minister of Finance. Our budget, you look at it. Let's start with misallocation.
Misallocations.
Each single year, the amount that is going to the State House is just beyond belief. Like now it's over 800 million.
From last year?
From last year. It's 24% increase.
Wow.
So tell me, can anyone sit there with a straight face and tell me that the amount of work the State House is doing, you know, they require a resource increase of 24% when other ministries that are very important, when school improvement grants are not being done, the State House is, that amount is increased by 24%. In fact, the amount going to the State House is more than the amount to the National Assembly and the whole judiciary combined. But
State House budget alone
is more than the whole of judiciary and National Assembly combined.
Wow.
Today, if you go to Farafenni, you look at the courthouse building for, you know, for NBR. Most of the time, you will see goats playing in there. You would not think this is an actual courthouse where court proceedings take place. This is just one example. So this is one example of a huge misallocation. Another example is Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
But let's stay at the State House.
Okay.
Why are we having so much? I know they created a new department, the Office of the Chief of Staff.
The ministry.
The ministry.
Yeah.
That has not even been created.
Even before it was budgeted.
Before it was budgeted.
Exactly.
And you created that whole department. The Chief of Staff is now a Minister of Presidential Affairs. He's going to have a whole ministry now.
So you can see why some things that they budget that are essential, they have trouble financing them. When something that wasn't budgeted, that is not even needed, they are getting significant amount. Because you're not going to create that in the state and not fund it. Whether or not National Assembly, because we already know they don't care about legal requirements, given that they miss the presentation by such a large amount. So here you are creating a new cabinet ministry and financing it. And yet, something as important, as fundamental as school improvement grant, you are foregoing that to create a position that is not needed. Why is a new cabinet, when you have how many ministries? When you have functional, every sector of the economy, their functional units are already in existing ministries. Why do you need a whole new cabinet level that's going to come with its own new entourage of positions, whole new expenditures? You create that. You have endless advisors who are not there for, because of their expertise, but they are there purely for political reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. No wonder. I mean, but the other thing to point,
permanent secretaries.
And permanent secretaries that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Permanent secretaries are not meant to be inside the State House. They're supposed to be at ministries.
Yeah.
So basically, this our current leadership have this mentality that is basically a majesty, where the king can get to spend as he wants, you know, as a monthly side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those budget rules don't apply. Legal requirements hardly applies. So there is no, it's not surprising, I mean, to account for where this huge misallocation of resources, how it's actually being spent. Yeah. You're creating positions that shouldn't be there, that have no use economically, but they are costly. You know. So, you know.
What is the other area also of misallocation?
I was going to go into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs.
You know, when it was 1.8 billion last year, I was raising flags. I thought by now, after some time, common sense would prevail, and then they would go down to below $1 billion. Now it's almost 2.4 billion.
2.4 from 1.8.
1.8. In order, so this significant increase, this is, by the way, during this increase, if you look at the Ministry of Agriculture, the increase is almost non-existent, just a minuscule increase. Yet you increase the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We do not need all of those embassies. But not only do we have a lot of embassies, they are bloated, because anytime you don't want an official, instead of firing him, you go and say you are reassigned to diplomatic service. Yeah. So the embassies are getting bloated with with people who are not doing any work that is of any use to the country. You have you know, embassies in locations that are not, you know, absolutely, they have, you know, you cannot imagine how useful they could be to the country. I can, you know, give other examples, but basically these two are symptomatic of a more larger problem.
Yeah.
And let's take to the embassies there.
Yeah.
If you take those people who have failed internally in politics, who have been adversely mentioned in corruption cases, and you move them to those embassies, you don't move them alone. You move them with a whole family.
The families, yeah.
Now, if you move those people with the families, you're going to pay for the education of the kids.
Kids, yeah.
And they're probably going to go to private schools, etc., not public schools.
Yeah.
You're going to pay for their medical expenses.
Their
you're going to pay for
accommodation.
their accommodation. You're going to pay for their travel, etc.
All their bills.
And a whole series of things that go around that. Now, you take, as you said, the President's Office this year, the estimate, the budget was $1.080 billion. That's what's in the budget estimate. The Ministry of Agriculture is $945 million. Okay?
The Ministry of, it's like half of the ministry.
So the Ministry of Agriculture has $135 million is less than the President's Office.
Office of the President.
Why does the President's Office need? So the whole of the Ministry of Agriculture, for the whole country, give them $945 million. You give the President's Office $1.080 billion. What's the logic? And they will tell you, oh, no, because Ministry of Agriculture, we have a lot of loans and grants, etc.
A lot of projects that,
why don't you put those in the President's Office? Why don't you finance the President's Office?
Because those projects supposed to,
they are not going to come.
They are not coming.
Yeah, I was mistaken, by the way. He's correct. The allocation to the Office of the President is over $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's over $1 billion.
Yeah, it's over $1 billion.
Yeah.
$1.8 billion.
No, 80.
1.80 million.
80 million. 82 or 85, $1.080 billion. So this is the amount they give to that office. Okay? Now, when you take that office, you wouldn't find anything coming from the budget support or the loans and grants, etc.
There's a guaranteed cash
from
there.
DLF. Because that's guaranteed. The others, you don't know whether it's going to come or not.
Exactly.
So they give that to Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education,
Yeah.
Ministry of Health, etc. If it doesn't come, too bad.
Yeah.
And worse, the budget is almost fungible in its entirety. So it means they can move funds from one area to another. This year, the President's office, the budget was exhausted before the end of the year. And they have spent in the region of $80 million more
Ahead of the
than what they had budgeted for. And next year it's going to be the same. So what do? They go environments. They go to a ministry or to a department or an agency, and they move money from there to another sector. Yeah. For that to happen, usually, you would have to get the department or the ministry to give their agreement, a consent, etc. Because Parliament allocates those budget resources per sector.
per sector.
And they are supposed to control those things. So you're not supposed to be moving them around like you wish. But they have these environments which allows them to move the money around. It's fungible. So they can move it from one ministry to another. You give $1.9 billion to the Ministry of Interior. If you need something for SIS, you just move it to SIS. No complaints, no questions asked.
And
the SIS budget is not controlled.
It's not controlled by Parliament. Nobody knows how much they spend, where they spend it, because it's national intelligence.
Yeah.
So nobody knows how they spend it, where they spend it.
And other thing, for example, what led to difficult negotiations with the IMF?
Yeah.
They have been misreporting. The figures that these people were reporting some of them were not reported properly.
Just like Senegal?
You see Senegal? They discovered 6 trillion CFA.
Yep.
6 trillion.
Cannot account for.
6 trillion
gone
CFA
like that. Yeah.
Disappeared in the budget, and they found that Macky and his people spent 6 trillion CFA outside the budget.
Even the numbers that they are claiming, they're giving the IMF, they are, it's all fake.
And we will find the same thing here in 2026. When we look, we'll find a lot of misreporting, a lot of unreported debt, a lot of hidden debt. We'll find it here. That is what is happening. Macky took the Senegalese budget from a deficit of 3 trillion CFA to 15 trillion CFA, 5 times. Barrow took our deficit from 46 billion
to
Jammeh and Jawara combined to 118 billion now.
In 7 years.
In 7 years, almost 8. But you see the amount of virtually $80 billion was added to our debt. And what do we have to show for that? Nothing. Nothing. Where did the money go? Where did the money go? This is what is making life more and more difficult for the Gambians. This is why our purchasing power is going through the floor. This is why education is failing, health is failing, NAWEC is in the doldrums. And they still think that Foreign Affairs needs $2.4 billion, and the Ministry of Finance needs $2.5 billion.
What do finance do actually? What do they do? Apart from travel,
what's productive about them?
Yes. I mean, the basic thing they need to do actually in terms of planning is not being done. But I mean, if I can go back, so the numbers I gave, I made a mistake. Okay. I understated because I was looking the number, the 800, that was from 2023.
23, yes.
2024 is, 2024 is already over $1 billion.
Yeah.
2025 is well over $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah. So it's a significant, but that amount itself is an understatement because as he was saying, what ends up being spent, it's far more. Yeah. Because let's look at the president's recent trip. I was in Basse and I saw a lot of vehicles belonging to other ministries.
Meet the People's Store.
Yeah, Meet the People's Store.
Yeah.
You have this huge caravan of vehicles, virtually no agency, no ministry is untouched. You have vehicles from the Food Safety and Quality Authority, all the way.
No, they take all. I remember when I was in Gamtel, when we go talk we don't take our official cars because when we leave the Benton Bridge, the car
exactly. Yeah. So what is happening during that time? The cost to the economy. All those agencies, ministries that are supposed to be working for several weeks, their work grinds to a halt. That is hidden cost. If they take a vehicle from another ministry, so it's essentially, over that period, it's essentially, you can be taking what's called a veilment, because it's just not cash, but the capital equipment and the lost time. It's like a transfer is being made from that ministry to the president's office. The fact of the matter is, for the president's store, you do not need all of these vehicles. You know, the vehicles that are already allocated for the State House will be more than sufficient.
But the toll, you know, the toll, I remember 2 years ago when the minister came to the assembly, then it was 20-something million, right? He said he was asking for 30 million, and 40 million at that time, and the NAM said no, and he was like, because they were overspending, they were spending more than what they, but now if you give us enough, we will not overspend, right? I think they were giving 30 billion.
Okay.
30 million. Now this year, they requested 50 million.
So he said to be given an increase so that they won't overspend. Now, when they were given that amount, did he come and say we spent within the budget?
They overspent.
I don't think they
overspent.
Yeah, but this year, the minister requested 50 million.
For the coming year.
And the NAMS approved 45 million.
Yeah. And
for the meet the people tour.
They will spend more than 50. You can be guaranteed about it. They will spend more than that. When these people go on this tour and start spraying cash during occasions, you think that's coming from the minister's own pocket? No.
Certainly
the
not.
amount in all the ministers are essentially on this tour. The work that's supposed to be done. You know, essentially you have a government-funded political rally because all of the cabinet ministers go. Exactly. What was the Minister of Finance doing speaking at the speaking in Soma about doing, you know, A, B, C, and D?
Minister of Finance?
Yes. No. He was there. You know, so
the Minister of Health was in Kiang and just disparaging the diaspora and their families.
How they attacked him.
What has that got to do with health?
Yeah.
You know,
what has that got to do with health?
But during that time, while he was speaking there in that part of Kia, how many times have people gone to hospitals, clinics that have no medicine, no medication? You know, when these people are supposed, I mean, the whole government machinery essentially shuts down. Yeah. So the cost to the economy, when that is calculated, this is very difficult to do. But it is these hidden costs that actually are significant, that might actually be more than the allocation that we hear about.
Exactly.
You know, government agencies that have nothing to do on a tour, their vehicles being taken away, and during that time, if Food Safety and Quality Authority, their vehicles are taken all the way to Basse, and they are part of these tour for weeks. During that time, will they be able to go and inspect any supermarkets or places where people's health are in serious under serious risk? No. What is the public health cost in terms of dollars and dollars when such when preventable things, you know, are forgotten, while those vehicles are just ferrying political operatives around the country? You know? So we shouldn't forget that money, 50 million, as large as it sounds, it might actually be smaller than the hidden cost. You know, from these things that has become now a political rally that is funded by the National Assembly.
And if you look at, in addition to what you're saying there, Ousman, the wear and tear of those vehicles doesn't get calculated either. You take a vehicle from, as you said, food security, you give it to somebody who has no connection with that ministry, takes the vehicle, he doesn't care about it, he doesn't own it, he doesn't go to maintain it, they just drive it anyhow they like. Exactly. They come back from the tour, the vehicle is in bad condition, you have to go maintain that vehicle and service it. That servicing is going to cost the taxpayer, the Gambian taxpayer. The additional fuel that they probably have to allocate to those people because they take their fuel long. They have to allocate them more fuel. That's at our expense. Now, if on top of all of that, you look at the number of person hours that are lost on this tour, all the people who go there are paid per diem, are paid everything else, and we lose the time they should be working in government.
Nothing is working right now.
So the number of staff hours lost during this tour, quantify that and see. That's more than the $30 million Ousman is talking about there. It's more than that.
So now, another thing that is also significant in this budget is the travel expenses. The government announced that they are on, how do they call it? Moratorium. But the president was in Senegal. The president in this short period, I think Asamat al-Sinyasaba or so. And I don't know, I mean, I said to myself, Jamal would not come to, if we are celebrating, what monument Lebenaja? He would, if we are celebrating April 14th, he will not be here. I know that. the president was in Dakar. He didn't even go the day, he went day before. And he went with an entourage, of course. And they were paid per diem. But we were told that the government is covering on travels.
Yes.
The UN summit, how many people went? Before that, the president went to Mecca. I said that here, and the people came after me online. The president went to Mecca with political advisors and women mobilizers and others. From there, he went to UN with them. From there, when he came, he
went to China.
The ministers, they were everywhere. But my thing with all of this is, you are telling us this on paper, because of expenses or the minister is telling us budget support but still still bringing expenses will be kekan. What is the point of all of this?
Almost every time we are in China. Ye bombardier plane le luasi from Canada. That plane ya luasi kata China. A doyata nyawnya ibe $200,000 jolale kata China. Kamurna another $200,000. Sa nata kai sija la yebatum, you're looking at minimum $500,000 to $600,000.
Landing fees ninkudo.
So muna nabita utamo la president utano la a regular flight. First class, we'll pay for it.
Security.
President, okay. But ninga bitaw atany mo be ko do. Sere la president pour katale economic class fam. Katale mo economic class. Bay nata bitaka pleno le wasi. So ay masakunda karado be ko anala political entourage be to ay sambanyola. Ntole be o be la o pleno le be jola kawul be sam. Mbe la hotelo le jola. Diamond, and we got a 2-star, 3-star, we got a 5-star hotel. You know what? That's what if I kijota tomorrow. Need are like UN General Assembly.
Yeah.
Or that negotiation dole. If it are more kata kodo ni wolubulo. Okay. New World Tata UN. Ikata 2-3-star hotel.
5-star.
Budget hotel.
$5-star.
So wole mini jola. dollar keme nintalul na siata suta kilin hotelol to dina moltata ika hotelol minta na doyata dollar keme lulu suta ka wala jo dol sta wuli dollar wuli kilin keme lulu wuli fula suta mil kata mil dani ko dola wala ka ko do to mil bulu o kata hotelol ka keme nintalul ronde jo ite keme lulu wuli kilin keme lulu jo dollar rot
for mu finkinta lo nyaabe
wala so ko sabana wala budget support di lela ite budget support di lela andu ni dara wala yewol hotelo jowo nyama ene milikata ilo entourage bay mo jama min be ko yesa mbaño law kabilo mo be padiem jolayele ni wol tata o meeting wol ni meeting o yela talu men kata opening ceremony to meeting be la lu men etaje no bota jeta ikata shopping la ita fen sangol la dimbayal ikatu wala ikata meeting o fona bina banda ko tege nana banda lu men na daw dum fana mo wala jenta lol tay seyna munat no bekela anto Gambia non la tax ko be ko tay ko ika jowol ikata mil don tokko dola be kata mil dani ko dola i nyaabe lebe ti nyaarola ina fo len don tokko dola the same thing wala kata jan 2017-18 birin tata non Ousainou Darboe ne Amadou Sanda yolu tata ni round table oke ye ko do mi nyinen wotu mo pour que Gambia ma ko non after change be Gambia tata 1.4 billion euros about 1.7 billion dollars.
Ngal me makabim baro na airport ako ko do nafta jang ako
ni no be bakala mo ate malo ko play leti nun ko do fama na folo
no baro ba jube e ba jube le kamin ke la ma ko la ta nyaami
sandi mo mal ke nyama yi Amadou Sanda ñol bondi ye Ousainou Darboe ñol bondi et cetera la mun dam de ñol be bondi ya jetti ñaaro kuma sakake su ñaaro kuma sta o kodo min nata jam ama dollaro million kimenani si about 360 million wala dun tanam
after 1.8
1.7 million
yeah
to be man na ko tek ko se alon ko ñu benda ñu betti ñaaro la ñu mata ku kela on photo o bela the same thing budget support min ñanta na la non abika na ko tek for next year 2025 it will mean plan ko billion tannin saba o le bolanam between don torolu sorolu ani budget support be mi sot la jaari billion tan ni saba ni nga billion fulo soto man ta ben tan nyele
wow kudo fana mi alan ko akumaita wala vehicles motor kabili e some OIC some nata nga moto jelle sang SUV malong
tan seni warawula
let's say 90 drum
around come around 90 vehicles ngole sang ñi moto da ko yalla moto do million tan ni lol moto do malon jelu
tan ni fula
kemelul saying wo moto be santa kabra banta modol ko bo motol fo manyana sana ba santale so idunda man sakunda kono nteba mira kan ko maybe at this point ntol manyana mira la moto sangola bari ngajele ko nyim budget kono ko di jamaabe ko ne ko tenke pour ko motol sang wo motol ngaje minister so lebulu ngaje minister so la protocol lebulu ngaje modol lebulu so at some point you know Gambia be nyame ntela salary nka motoje modol bulu wala entire lifetime wala salary from 15 million aussi ko di ni a calculate but wala salary wala ko moto si fale borindi ndim min wala 15 million moto value lonna nyaadile natra ma you understand jandi fo appreciate la yala value long so ngaji ko te ke nyim bojoto kono moto ko do financiata je ko teke is that family kwa reasonable to prove be tembo minto bari minister kaminye ko na situation obe nyame no ba fo minister fo ngale ako budget support manna ako mbe stress le kono debt wise julomi ben ko ta ben kangole to hande mama rengol ta banna jora wala ala interpretation of word now saying hani say na budget o man talano because nka mi relo ko hani to last word kono ning nila dépense o yaajo ko abe sele kanan du itela ko do mansi ika jibelo ko yamarante biwo be nyanka tangol tabira so man ninka tulo tabi lokun ko signalul mba talala ngata bi signafula because ima ke ita ke no munati na we spending so much on motola nin kudolo na yatra ma soto mbuka soto
no I mean ning problem o bitung ni ya jube moto mil fango santa moto sipa mil santa sulata moto la jama bi jam sulata bari tel ka moto mil sang e kan na ko dun di moto sipa mil tu o buka banko nafa ni moto li kan ni mil la price o mil kata fu 12 million ni moto ita ke no la police moto ita ke no la ambulance oti ita ke no la school bus oti but ni loda bi Westfield wali na turntable wali tada tabo koto luwolo ika momil harabadi mo mil traje be loring moto ko dol ka lo jele wati fula wati sabay be moto nyene ne ma soto ndella jamma oban transportation soto bar wo moto kilungo ulan kuza asi hani boss fula sayenole wo moto ko mi be dun taje ni o land cruiser ko ni o san boss wala public transportation transit system wata kala jam problem mot adu waka mo economy cost min na jam mol yalu ye jido ko la imam ebe fotal nyamin soko ne malo mol be live down wala sobandani wularo o bebi je dinnugol ni tata banjul bi ibe loring ebe tambi kan Gambia school ma fe ka dinni jolle tata loring siloka ibe live down wala you know loptano do juma sa fe ko tela loptano milbe Gambia jang ambulance wa ABC le sai ha so
ambulance juma sang COVID time
ha bar wo fana mun fana kena yalo nga ko min spend wolto ambulance kili wo killing nga ko min spend nga overspend mo malo ko ni tata
I remember the Malagan report in fact ya fela ko ambulance wolte hani sandi sabakela and wala keta
imang guarantee ye ko afengo mi nyalo nyanda and like let's say $40,000 it eta over 70,000 spend worker adite bo sanka a jamale normally ni be fengo san ni ko killing na da se kolea but ni dara jamale isi discount soto noje ntel nga overspend et la quality man better ifele mamme you know so ni ajube nga koromin drong waste nyinto so ni manke first and di masakunda e ka kukiling fo idala bi sama bi tamin kala woni way manke kilindi man fo yari memba la fam hani kabiri nyil nata ya imene announce de comme to fo mil ka bori mil man number plate soto itel bo stop la because you know ya jamela time wo siata no jorti moto li kejel mi ala ko number plate bari bi moto fo be kene mi ala ko number plate soto mol kata e ka number plate cover so bi fa won ka motoje mi ala ka no plate soto wala fo siata dina jamela time because nun to milka keno security damala kan sai ka mo jele man sakunda moto mi ala ko man reason soto pour wala no plate e cover e ka trabe cover as a tambi police wala mota fem fola so mbe moto sanka bari ngajele min keta OIC ani manfa nyininka ni moto mi be sanda ni mo sita ya kiskis fa e balo na moto mi fa be sanka nyim bojoto manyan na kasa bari ba sanka ba du nikan dame amandra futa kanya ndat futa la dame ko school bosol wonte l'hôpital la ambulance amanke wote public transportation amanke wote so akata buntole ajube bi ni moto mil santa ni OIC yadi joma nyolle la milliard lon ko moto fa be bulle no bare ni moto ko do leta ya de la ko to malum mun keta e mata ya jube jumal sulata nyinna because ni moto sai hani itaral no ye wanter fa ko do nyinta nga dundi kudo wol mo be fisiala dina kata ka di molla because ni moto e ka buri dawoda nyil be mu 8 cylinders let nyil be mu 8 cylinders let one gallon abukatambi 9 miles so wo kodo ala tinyaro amanda ko mi ngawo moto sa wato min luwolu moto le bori kanjam man sakunda la kodo wala ka wol borinde adi moto be bori kan ko min amanke banko la nyaato taade
so saying nga jele fanan ngaje ni wato kono teachers holu strike o siata ni wato kono nga jele university dino wol strike la wol mu kudolte wala lecturer wol be code bari teachers holu wala strike kumata because ila payment kuolam a bebe budget kuole kono bari nim budget support man na ya fole ko education ni man joro ke no wol dolia bari the office of the president is always guaranteed wo mu kodi ke yalon ko wala fo ba sala to sina do ni min to nga fufu now ngaje ko teachers all were complaining about some pays and there were some other sectors from the Mialanko Ikamul were complaining about delay of their payments and then Iba strike la ministry kumandi na NEC yakacha ngam this time of Friday afternoon le staying no Friday evening the payment will send le because the man left strike nisi fa kamune create banko kam because it's serious if teachers want to go on strike because major and then student exams are affected. How bad the economy benyadi le fonka si aka payment problems will fonka ka finti band.
Oka banko samba ko manyame mfango akoleate le pour ka ka understand because being na education fango nyanda ka demaro mindi education na ama usia bake ne education na budgetoje akodo be kata comme salaries leto bare min kata ja mansia min kata ka schoolol ka karamul lo ka bukul sam this order pedagogical material ka wol be sam wol be le man wol kono buka soto wolto so ni aje fa school lota ñing grants ñol lem ñing projet ko le kana be school fa loka so ni aje tija sol bita ibe strike la amanke ko min adiatel ni tija be fintila inyante jola minna man sakunda fa ngoye promise minna itel fombe jikiri minna wole manna ado amanke ko tija moto lola afu tija sol ke jomi na overseer e ka mo jamajel ni aje bukata tikin fil jomi mbije aman jamale nyabo so doma no mil kamin soto anu wo extra assistant min nyanta kana nim man sakunda mawnati bari wo kola nyil nyaba kanko dulal mi yalon koy mankuma ya bankola nyato tay ina ma moy diplomatic staffs nyol in other embassies will be complain kay la jomanna ila embassy min be banku do ni ma jo wodati jabe fin ila embassy fin ila dulato wo diplomatic staff wala salaries ila allowances ko min be kata wo rents nyol wo luwasol wol buka late so ngamin fana fo president fana na office do mil bijete ñing extra officials akamil create je extra offices akamil be create je wala jobu ka manki adu ka tarde so mo nyaba kam ko mi alon koy man kuma ya adu mota silaje ya fo ku kuma da karamote because nyamo saman na nyabun ko saman na development no human capital kuman tambi wota education is one of the most important but so ni tija sol nyaabe o kam ko mi yalo amati tija sol dammat nte manke tijari bari nyaaba kan ni mimbe keri ko nyanta ka naflo banko naflo nyanta ka dundame ima futandi je what tija sol they have every right to strike because amanke ko min yelbe strike for no reason e nyanta min sotola ade be bata kambe some of these are in school dol need for that jebe damen jamanke bla easy ringolti bi del nyanta trailer len ka ko men dun education ay siya nga mol attract na mol ka ji university to milka sije ka do ko soto wol kidi teaching kan not only come ye kidi teaching kan because afenketale asono yata but at least ni be do ko kela jo kay anila ila allowance wo nyanta kamin soto hani fe manjana mankela ha but ni aje bitu nyelbe nyenkela fo be exam wato le kono be karandiro stop la e be findla siloka e salon ko wol fanan amang easy so janni modol be afole ko teacher sol manyanna ka strike because ngaw moy modol la e be dinno le karandika e kana tare akofo e salon wol fanan be situation o minto ya try wala situation o understand demande because ngala no teacher sol wolte findla wo nyatendo ya fo be strike la na ya try imam fen ko soto imam good reasons soto
now saying MPC jiwe Central Bank la kotali MPC na tal kotake I was away ngaje ngamre ko official demande this time iko fenko jita la demanding inflation jita la demanding 2% I think ka jita wala. Also, even though the dollar is depreciating against all these major currencies, bari aka depreciate rate mi na wojita domande against the dollar, but still dollar mfama woluwa dollar style ni ngaro ke woka ko dollar was what 70 what for 71 something 71.15 something. So but sometime 3 months ago it was around 70. So, baritolko, eko dollar depreciate against dollar, so still depreciating against the dollar and all major currencies, but ala rate ni talatale domande. Eko inflation o ajitale. Ila report jenyade.
Yalo data min ka do wol kon o calculation o. Ministry of Finance and NGBOS.
Yeah.
Wole ka data collect.
Yes.
Ya di, ika wole calculate ka fofu ajitale famanji.
Ha.
Baren ntaka men fodron e kamin sa fe woto Gambia diwol jama babi je bi ka understand fo men bije bari kamin understand wala intata mar sewto idara fe ko sang
jaba boto manji
e ka jabo sam men na kunu fo ka sa wala bi
atamita aseleta
asal men na serum fo ka sa wala nyina ila nyewda fa tala le famantala ila vegetables fo da sa le fo da bantala mol ka wala lo ika ben jola ka dino kara bon fatarat le famantala ika borol sammin fatarat le famantala moli yolon because mo jama bije ni MPC la press release wala la report ni a release ni man economics londo soto to mudo ka ibika ban fuka karana fa ka landile because ka fa ni kam fantama ku kala mutaji war mole min kala muta wala mo ko lambe laare kanita ra fegul sang ni tata ko du bondo ko lambe laare ko yolon so nit lo te ko haban ko economy bi fisi hakanne inflation jitale molu consumer spending be sele kanne banks you are doing well liquidity rate and everything you will base for moli ma work understand bari ko lambe laare ko to fule yede yolon so MPC nteka men for often ko gafele ko mi lebije technocrats ñoo lebije mo ci ma bi yelo do ko wonno ika do ko ka ñaam bari ila management ila ñaaton ko wala ke let down wala ka ko mi yala ka man ñanda ket alto ñaa fo molier sa long ni nga taraw ite ya lon ko jari de ko lambi na abe ro tamila ñinan tala afo molier ici la jari la ya commence ka ferol ke be min ke la pour que la dépense wol tala wala ko din landi ni ñanta la frijo sanna for 10,000 ko ha jarabe ko lamatu 6,000 tani ni na 4,000 lande fankantola ye ko long isi sama nyasi ban ni mafto nya fa moliye e ko sayin ko be talaka ko be tayakan do man dum bogul o yewta yo dunde kudo jari ko le anyinanti yow la batale kaf okay so mansa kunda yi nyanta mun ne kala ka mol la balu sahayandi ndito keno la te man to nya foye ito keno la nata minsi wo sahayandi fana mo kato dangoke dala sote la depression te talano la ni ngatan dala so min ka sustain min ka dala so sembentu ya wolu man soto dala so sembo soto no la ni ngata few fento so tankata be sanam bantale me sura banta banko la ko do la bakele no dala so be boylale ni ngata ma economics ro nyum banko kam ngas dala so sembentu dala so sembe wala dala so be boylale ba ni ngana agriculture sembentu ya mi yalon ko sawo sanga ko do min dunde agriculture kata fengol sam pata do morol ko do to jang sul tamina do la so be talala le son dala so te boylaw nyama ni ngata ka to sol so ka siya jang ikana ko do di jang foreign exchange min sul sala banko bantala banko la ko do min sulatala o fana be siya la janne na dala so be bambannale ni ngata ka julo min jo banta wato julo ma o siyake ka to julo sawo sanga ka kafule andun ka sandala sole la dala sobe boyla ko teke ni wujulo talata dala sobe sembo so dale bari mi tembo mi tol do man soto dala sobe continuer ka boy su ko daf mo dala sobe fiseya kan amam fiseya ka to min ka dala sobe fise ndila wala man soto dala sobe continuer ka boy anda boy tanyam ko la lawol nyama e kam min sanyi nan dala si wuli tan nin dala so boyta hani man fen ka fu jari basana wultan nin fulala
fengo buka da buka tala Gambia nim fengo seleta sinya kilinde abuka tala so wala na ninde nga moy inga folo ko nde my understanding of inflation wala nde kan mani bodo sanjele ngam buro sanjele ka jabo sanjele ka tulo sanjele no courant sanjele and no men korosi Gambia wala fewo fe na seleta abuka ji hani mune ke tay hani masakunda ko mune tax break bi hani ko mune ke Gambia fengo min seleta o gaji so male ka inflation o calculate nyaadi nte tolle mi an kom tol man economics man ko tol kam ne jibe dro fo fengo daji ta ando min ko ta wala fengo dabu gaji wo mu ko kile lo fengo o ngaje fanan ko ira reporto iko nyina samo sama be diala bari Nka fat sila story jibe because I don't know the people story with the president. Every single story. Farmers sola complain o kakeminti wolonko ila ninang ila tiol mambetea ika tiol minka utu like nka wala moy farmers sola ila story that's what I see on the stories. That's what I hear on the videos that are published on my network. Bari Central Bank la MPC ko sama be dialal so ite mu generality so what is your money observation oti nyina sama fo be dialal bang as reflected on the MPC
before me for sama la ko le min follow ko min fengol la price o kasele nyamen tem follow ngata manola wala price
mano ha
be ngalo ne manola price wato wara be kafukan Gambia but near jube internationally bantala bankoka the world price of rice Kabo December last year, Canadians, kariwo kari, abijika ne 1%.
Wow.
Kariwo kari, that means ne world price of rice, rice la manola price jube. Kabo December last year, Canadian, ajita by 10%.
Wow.
10%. So ndela ja wato kono yamole manu da jita.
Hani.
Abe kafukan drong. So wala tin Manneh min fo jam mfana ngole fo last time ni man sakunda la molo da ko inflation o be amanke problème o de ko da jita aman jare economy so de fo ye fe understand economists la carola fengol la da la price o itele fo mo exporto de katambe han economists jomale han 10 pages babu because ni ta ko do bondi la jifo kono mani boto last year e kamo 2100 bitara ko 2250 jomale be tala ya fo ko price o nyinjita ko do nyaka bo jomale jifo kono so ela nyim fenko ela inflation sande malo nyindo yimi report fo jol fa asiatle fa fenke tam barinte kam fo molle inflation na karola o kay woy kana siye la moy masakunda kam fo bari defan kada marché o ni manta marché de muso bita marché o ni muso manta ko bita marché o korda ko momo yalo ne fengol la price o fa be kafukan ne ban fa be jikan bari yemi fo samala ko defana ngawjele ay dum woy jobi nam fala ko fo mil be state in central bank fo mam mo so je ba me agricultural ko lomba wo fo mo tebulu je min ka finti la office ko no bankata banko hani man jam hadi manta fo wulli nyoli manta jara o nyani nyol dan ko mo jan o wore dan kiya fo da lawd la bi molbe min fule tiyo ni awuto ibuka fenne mo jama bi je bi min sotta tiye nyamo ta sotta tiyo cause mo nekata of course sama nyata nala nyamen ogos tiyo ka sulo bondi wato minna amanna a nyama so ma tiyo groundnut la carola tiyo la carola moma yilning expect ay betea ko la fana wamo min fanan keta bolon kono mafan kata URR nyol kantora nyol ay sati jamal la manotiya ha so ni tebe safero ke la ita ko min kam man sakunda ka ko sona yandi be fengol fola president wana la mole min manke fengol jandi ko to dunde la fengol fola je at least findi folo ya juwi min be keri bari ndengaje nyamenteng idalta kaminke o normally momi yalo ka nyanta ka loka ko senendima agricultural karoto iman sonna ka wolle dadu ndije o wole min foye me lamoya e report o safi ilafta mimbe komin ka false picture di economy la bari de mo nya bi sanela ni ifutata ya kay ko ila tio ti seno betiata ate fo ila tio ura man fenke iman raw nenkan you know so ntamalo ibe nyike kamuna adu meta nyim folale komin mana ya fu nyamenten ro central bank do kula mi bije siatale adu mo jama bije ila do ko e nyanta kila nyame ba ke ka wonyale bari la nyaton ko bilbe santo you know so especially ila governors will they have become political operatives will book will not ke politician all let president ala mo lafta kamim mo ka wala foye economy bitaka nyame ibuka report wonya
Eco this year we forecast the economy will grow by 5.7%, supported by a better cropping season, strong public and private investment spending, household consumption, and a rebound in tourism. So 5.7 natra wall economy will grow la walla woto womo fennete mi alonko o betara.
But household consumption obebola muntole because normally wo is driven by the economy fem ko bitaka you know economy bitaka nyata tala nyame o abi improve come from bare neamoy momil be bolon ko ne be ko do spend ila tia sino le betiata nintere to na yela tiyo kukilimbe nyi masakunda hani tiyo nyanta jola wato men fo man si janne serum dol sita lokun jolle be siri be la jobatun kan ila tiyo samba ya samba pesardula masakunda ila tiyo ta dol be sirin kari jama ila koromanda you know wol bebe kere adun kudol be janne senola karola mi alon ko masakunda si demaro kenole kawol improve ndi wolem nyi ngadi non la karola bari masakunda bu kan demaro le samba nyi musol la gadi non la karola niyamo wole demaro soto molle milnate di dema waram projet ko le nata bari masakunda fa wala kodo abuka do nyi gadi non kono so nin tiastia seno man fenke mano dolla mano tinyata ita buka livestock ibuka wol mako e nyante mako le nyame nyi musol la nyi gadi no demaro e nyanta min sotle ita buko soto ita sino nyaadi le yafo bi ha ndengamere ni economy abe grow la 5% juto because agriculture abe bete ala bakel fo ete amenita fo la kati na wo bekela ba
Yeah.
manzo ko nanya ndaka minke ma woleke
And near press release Jube, at one point, private sector investment has grown very Fonko and I think by 48% or something like that, and the banks are doing well, etc. Near Jube, the banks
bank lending has gone down
to the private sector.
Yeah. Yes.
Why? Because banks saying lending to the private sector is a secondary activity. Banks could also be while buying central bank treasury bills and in government bonds. Kudoka boy wallet. Fatiya you bank Gambia ko jang. Banks will be faring jang.
Yeah.
Kolka kudo soto nyaadi ka economy man tatamaka. Ikat kudo soto nyaadi treasury bills lemo and in government bonds. Risk tije ya sangi be jolale. High interest rate. So you must be more don't wala. So don't they are crowding out the private sector. Because government could table bankrupt tale. Karifa. ikaw treasury bills and government bonds ika wole issue ni ko do min soto woto yes salary suñol joje der suñol dol joje en min jola ay continue so amunta kari ika kolongo sindra kolongo din ko teke pour ka kolondo femma soto nyim banko kan so be don torol banko kata mo don torol so wala tin na ko labe ka fukan wala la so ka boy so nyim bank suñol no wala ko ila activity kafta yes activity kafta because kama sakunda ron to ko dola
yeah
masakunda so to ko do be na masoto kita don to bank suñol lebu so ni o don to wato wati ika min jo kotake wala ka siya so ni wuli keme don to sign be wuli keme wuli wala wuli keme wuli tanjola so be kafole dron next time wuli keme wuli tan don te wuli keme wuli muwanjo so julo ka kafole dron ni dal so la boy wala kan aka kafole dron ko lebe kafole dron
so say
kame fo la report ani o man killing
say be tolbe laban na nyaadi de foreign exchange decline in foreign exchange growth, right? The dollar sola against other currencies ajitale na julobe nkangoto. All of these things, the other sectors, so agriculture, now inflation is still at 11%. Ngamra 9 because I so 9 bank. Natural still is high. Banco do Buffalo 2. I went to the US. US inflation is around 2%. Maybe kumbola water. Deni alonko wala wage so ila wage minimum wage from nyame. But we more kumbola grocery price la even though local inflation over 2 le. They can mirror told me the 9. If people
wolu yafnya la jobe nyami e ka fne disposable income.
Yeah.
In kare fasita yere fewul be joje. Yela do moro sanje yela kurawli joje yela la karabol di fewul be joje. In ka tuy koto. Disposable income is me use no wala isa spend no wala karado ma wuje. Wol kaw soto la siata.
Yeah.
Nton la janne kare fa yejo. Yani bi kare fa jom to kata julo be do fa ban. So disposable income table 20 years mi landi no wala simi spend no kote. So wala tan inflation no selta ka mol fa. Because fende table molu ka fende ma wono kote ke. Mil sa fo na karfa kanyi nan kam le ma wono o dango do yata ba. Ka ci ko do mela dimba fo le samano. Mol ko julo ka tu julo la tar mo la taring. So ning ite man fere pour ka watala pour wol finance fan sotondino pour si femma wono wala ku doke. O bita nyaato nyaadi and wote Kenya because carry si ka tax kuto le min la moluka o tax ñu o lebe fa kam fana yere si wuli hañi nanga ñi karoga 1.3 billion ta in tax e so bula wala mo tay kuma fale wala
yeah
but ko be mil bulu fen ko to bulu ko take ni si ko keno
I tell you, people, we cannot blame the GRA because the policy is coming from the Minister of Finance. It all can implement the it's a cost to us. You know, it's a
contract or signed them from founding corruption.
It's a cost to us. So I don't blame the GRA for that, but I blame the Minister of Finance. And I keep saying this, I'm sorry to say, but I wish we had
Ndafanka mambure attack number. Bari syndicator. No. Syndicator wala incompetence nying. Mo minister of finance do mialon ka mala do ko long aba kala nyami ka minister so do bin tambita syndicator la. Mamere ndene ngaso.
Ndene fujana ba ndene amira ko maybe mo do ko nyoko nga fujana ko I feel like city is the worst finance minister nga for senior keme. Mo ko nyoko no you are attacking him but I'm not. That's how I feel.
UDP. Ousman Mantra UDP.
No example odile. No example odile. Nyin Senegambia bridge.
Yeah.
Nyin Senegambia bridge. Manyim fo nga saveno article do. Kabiri nyil be nyin negotiate la. You know, a negotiation manta anyama because syndicate for ma understanding nyin asset recycling aka minfo.
Exactly.
Because ne ko do nyin eta anyanta dunda dame bara aka minfo National Assembly aka minfo modoli IMF nyol aka minfo nabe press conference amanki kili ha nyin jara fa ku dol fo be nyin agreement o mi alon ka ma fo mo hani National Assembly ma fo mo e Gambia jam nyil tad agreement o nyin kono itara le ko Africa 50 baral tel betara jam fo sanji tanni lulu tanni lulu
mwani lulu
okay ngambara 15 them
okay
ha bari okay maybe I say no mistake but ngambara 15 them during that 15-year period, British Lola Gambia.
No.
Yes.
You don't agreement on more for more. My National Assembly, Ndengo Kalamuta IMF level. You for IMF because it hanging man for IMF. Wole ni kafo for neba for lele. But syndicated tada yo agreement no sign. Kafo ko do 15 years so. Nimbrijo betala wol wato menda.
Bante brido fana lolanda banko
because nimbrijo lota. Moto si abeni do computer moto do sitano wo karado tole ñul sulata ko do min soto layta soto lajje. Ni minister syndicated yo agreement no sign. In other words, ñing danko don ko dinno be min soto la sign. In your spend a diate nyame ye bankola development so baro be lola ka fa te brijo lo as lol dada but ite clean bita ila minister ale agreement o sign ya foko banko sign te bridge lola in river Gambia jam for the next 15 years.
Wow.
Puru nindol
because of this Africa 50 contract.
Africa 50 because of contract ko nyim puru wol kana wol sulata ka ko do min so da kana manke pour mo jam cross later je mafa yow dundi jël anu syndicated ñi announce le ay agree la ya safe bari wo time o be atata ay press conference jamalek
inemo fo mo
atata national assembly anene mo fo
wow
ndefa ngoje dame ngaji IMF la documents le bulu because ya kondi wol male bari Gambian more e ma fo woli so be kukuru jamal ke kanyim banko kan mi yalon ko ya mabo daga nyin kalamuta sayne bon mune fana mbije mi yalon ko telma kalamuta so ila mo bela banko bridge hani bridge killing nta lora jam for the next 15 years ado say agreement is signed well that they've taken over ye Senegambe bridge nyin sa ya tale sign so until sign ndella mansa ko ndella banko kam bridge lola jam hana ko mo le ya nati
baro president baro ko ban raja konye ko Banjul Bara Bridge, about bridge line, bridge, Akaba bridge line. President Barrow, that was a promise that President Barrow made to the Gambian people. So are you telling me, because I don't think President Barrow will be here for 25 years or 15 years extra. So you're telling me that will not happen? That will not happen.
Adung ya kalamutal because Ibrahim Silla Kabra go for Kawato Mena next year. I mean last year go for Kabloka Banco Malu ferry terminal lemba for above la coming it'll be Briolo Laje. Where travel agreement owning Aketa Africa 50 agreement assigned telephone parade. So it'll you kalamutale, but we call I be lowering. It'll be the same mansa kundale be lori bavuka mole ko it'll be Briolo at Italiano it'll low because agreement will mean for 150 kilometers from the from the Fenkoning from the Senegambia bridge but near 150 kilometers bondi yeka dumbale fankono so bridge that means bridge letter lola over the river Gambia for the next 15 years hani mole nata World Bank le nada 80 billion yen sola ntalona by agreement ntalona
but from the agreement of an cancel no
neo cancel bi will be sambal international arbitration
no, but some of the deals these people sign on our behalf is terrible.
I got this information. First time I Pamurula radio Rangafoleto. Bring up for Alfalco Yakonya. I can eat a sort of Ibamuela Temela, Ibafaleco sign. Bring a sign. And Kakonya international agreement letter. Yanta in some parliament ratify. Ako no nta samara je fenkita dia balantanka je nta samani masama je is null and void nulu bina attack ma break no berin dia mo sera ko hamba samala je bari mampale for because bakla PPP lete kayta man PPP loi fa soto bakla nyaadi okay o agreement to Ousman Gajigo IMF denga soto from Africa 50 even before ya for Gambia ndo IMF for le budget ya nto nga fa UDP opposition so yep o agreement bi jele kon def sale lola nyim banko kan fu jande ni agreement ban andu salo ya taylele sanji mo wani lulo nyanta ni sanji mo wani lulo ta ngako do mi soto je bi soto je sero ni ajube sanji mo wani lulo ni yet fu ne fotu mo watu men ko fa nyami ni akal mo $1 million aka entol fi every month
it will for no ha
so $1 million over 25 years, that's $300 million.
Yeah, but in us, 100 million.
To for 100 million. So over 25 years, nobody could also do what agreement, but it also 25 years. because ku jama lebe do mil defola and watu be gonto sera lola ko tekeno so banko be tarla lord la kilimo to isi nyimman sa kunda na tele man fewol men do ku jang e bil tarajang e ka wolle be wafi e ka wolle bi ko be salo tayle ko ala ko aset recycling man na kala jang katu nyin salo man ko di edi bi len du sola $97 million
ninka 100 million so to
14 million euro nga wala ta ko de ka fuma pour que silol dada from the bridge mo so to fa o manke edi bi fana ko edi bi $97 million dollars but 14 million fa European Union pagoda funds ka so to wala pour que silol do ko sanka bo salo to kata Senegal kara fulo be okay o be dul to salo il ko ya tayle ko ndata ba tayle al bari cycle kufula amanya na kala de banal ba kala alta le pipeline of projects da mi ko project mi ko ni ko do dato ba dum lawl bay ko ni asa ko ni tay le bi ko project le do ko ko ta project le da follow yewul da ya landi nan ko do na do ya dum diji ni ba dum diji ba do mala follow flanjam yes special purpose vehicle da ni ko do na ta du woto je ni ba suspend ni ko mba kala le ko do manki pipeline project man do ko special purpose vehicle man lo open ko do nata ñile ko 15.5 million
ko fonat
abe yemanta
adunda wol kon
so banko be otembol so fefa mi dara banko kan ñi man sakunda ba ko di tebulu e man do kuno e man alo banko sambal ñamin kuru ya bije incompetence bije do kuno bal ya bije haji lombal ya bije ani banko xeyma banko xato be bije so fefa mi banko kaytlu ka be tiñala drong da kon to lama sakunda to nga tambi tan nim be bondi la jewati ne dan ko to lafta men nga wosoto so bi yemunde wafi yenna bridge tayle yenna poro taya di alberak la on the terrible conditions hani na banjur poro mi yalon ko ngadu ko nga yo fanan kafuje indi deal so bi banjur poro ni dal sikima doku tan sevita alberak le ndo mo wondon sot laji nano be kala gamsel
samba pare
airport Gambia International Airways ya iba burka kan e niro
bije
Gambia International Airways airport iba tayle ko to fana fana tayle ko concession ko le nawe katemela so
mo le tarlan tolgo national assets
na wollole wol ko do ku kadu dépense kunda ko no e ka dividends jo masa kunda o dividends ñol ñanto ta ngana do ko kala wol so tanu jabakar jabi wat min gamtel no gamtel le kala civil service salary li yo ika dividend le joma sekunda kar sawo
gamtel le GRTS create
yes
ntolo force salary gambe GRTS gamtel le kan to jom
bi ñu le na nan o masakunda jawra na masakunda yo mil doku ko be wafi tu
akamtolo ko yalo ikafo ko kene wafila na ya keno kumasi ntolo kombo alfa le kafo ko ngal men man tol mama ñol tolo alkalo ti mandinare bal kiraru no dol bije wol hani bi kene kilinte wol munatina ni kene wafo nene ibuke daha
you know
ka be waf akam to ko mbolo kono right now every asset iba recycle ka
la men komma aka wala fa ko ako sutio ne jawul to somanda ala musula min kalota ada ta ya tayle o so mo dar fanuta ta ya tayle
sinde ya ñindon ta tayle
ñin ka roke ko le yabe duka anda ko min tayle ma bi ban tayle la te foñol wala be kere
adu bu ka ñim faw membe kere foy bu ka ñim faw sineni molma be ndokum kam molma mol kata ñim moy bantala banku
donc Africa 50 ngade online to ngade online la remember we saw it online to na report kabri na report on Saturday a press conference commande yang kata Ibrahim Silani minister kata para kata dia sana
explain
yes but they did not tell us we saw it and we reported say ñimbe be kere ndeka min fo to be honest nin baro diam tante ka fo fontol be banko min kan ni ñu be banko min ka mankile when I listen to people like you and then ngalla moy masakunda molla nga fo ko fontol le confused to fom le be caring bank somebody is not telling us the reality because ni ngal ko recycling be ke kan wo mutonya ngal ko inflation o mantala na mano da mantala tulo kurango fengo be manta but ni tel ko nyoko economy la outlook be tenne is good fengo be fenge but be minister fengo ka fonyo abe tentine be ngojel and the minister of finance akanye min be fontole minister is the chief accounting officer kind of. Minister of Finance na ko be wa tere bloko. Na te ka fu tolle ko RVTH wato ntol na control no de wato e ko 1.2 los to barka nga bank samba je sai nga 4.6 million ko. Minister of Finance ka juwan nene. Akamune fontole. Sabi jelite le Minister of Finance di. You cannot even control portfolios under your government.
Bridge that Senegal bridge before ba tele nyilma. Wadi kasino nyilka means sort of per month. Akada 30 something kada 35 million 39 million na siata bare kabri yewo counters nyol kije asaunta 50
afango na report
yes wo counter tada ya kati ya tinya because bukati wol hani ya kati letenga aka move afango en hing amuruta na again bare ite be siri te alo be kere jumala ite bali kata ka make sure that counter bije CCTV camera rol bije ka muta ka jube jumale be munanna ni wo bije kodo min kana akasia bar ni wotije kodo be ka yema yeah. So ite sita wonya ite ko nyewu ko kay abe wonya tendro fenko hospital of fanam RVTH nita la molle fa bije alkamin soto jabu kasia ye bank nadi I triple yes bari
ite kata
complain jumale ite le Minister of Finance
ako agriculture grants or min kana Minister of Agriculture ite they cannot a Minister of Health ako ite will book account for no because it will book they don't let us in on malo nyadi
let me give you another
Minister
example.
of Finance is telling us this.
Let me give another example. Nitara be nawek la website auto ka jube la annual financial statement the most the most recent one abekela 2021 2021 for 124 mbe 2024 le kono bi by law it is mo excuse le soto ka foko itela annual statement no ita kayto min nyanta kani tan di molla itela alla dépense ale kodo mil soto min bina ale min be dépense kayto min nyanta ko be nyitande munati na serunta o man fin bi bila kari ñinan na kari sabo muna na o man fin bari mbe ñim banko min kan bi ni tara ñing parastatals ñol belan wot state enterprise ka kilinje mi yalon ko ala annual financial statement mi yalon ko serunta pareta Italian.
And you know what? For GRA to renew itela tax pour la tax file pour la business or as businesses. Ntolo pour tax clearance dinna pour na business relation or renew for la financial reporting kaito dila. Nin also okay no business ndingo bari nin ya lon ko be denta minna. Work at 3 years behind, 4 years behind. That's
no do fanam for minimum kabiring arabaro na in power from 2007. 2017 to 2020 nga nawek la kayto men soto ila annual financial statement yemin audit niya jube sawosa on average kodo mi ya lon ko auditol ita account nona is at least $200 million sawosa so niyo extrapolate nyina sanjo min kijang ani sentima billion fula atambitala
yes
nim banku dolem sawosa ning nawek la kaytol findita sawosa and that should trigger a special audit
yes.
But an element trigger
so the audit ka kedla to mi alon ko interest holder
yes so nyanda kala dame mi alon ka kumari because kodo mi alon ko mo malo min ketala nawek damatu niya kafu nyonka right now niyo kodota ndella sura do krom min bela Gambia jam pour hani outage kanata asa power station no nyim bankuka because ning average lem $200 million per year ya yo konte kapin 2017 kanabi ya estimate abekela jullet because normally power plant oni ba fenge isa estimate normally 1 million will give you about 1 megawatt ndel currently na total generation capacity banko kanjang amansia atambita 50 megawatts
bari fenne fo nyiwato kono de ngamo ko ngamo to kono de ko mone e fenne fo kuramo to de ko yemni fo e fenne fo de yalla nabe baro be ndo ko kuramo to mono do ku jande fo
yalla 50 megawatts for is the installed capacity but the production is about 5 megawatts sign
so ndella kuramo min be ka fenki jam most of it akabonan Senegal and in car power so until la nunto nka kuro mi generate banko kan jamela time wala siada sai ngam inso
ñun beti ñata ma sino beti par Sénégal ta fango jibe o courant mi ka Sénégal ka ta ko sa namin tole manantali sen independent power producer ikata courant sa manantali le 23 CFA francs per kilowatt hour ina ta jawa fi mo 132 CFA
be profit o sotoka
Where am I knowledge?
exactly.
No,
Senelec is making over 20 billion CFA profit on the Gambia.
So you can't find muna na wolba lo kan Senegal bari ma loja because mimbe caring ndela janni investors bina ka koro dundi la banko kan ko nyanda tala nyamal because ika wala nka ka powership soto because wol nimmajo
2017 first time ka power bija
no be mean ka power manyana mela jam because nyin kuran sifal e ka kele on an emergency
basis yeah
serelion nyin ka min ketela
yeah
itare jikita ka power la watsi de mela kuran jo dan wala muneke yela anko le bondi ten ron kuran e disconnect etata tili mala tili jolleke e man kuran so wato minna woli nyin ka minna ya bejo jele kuran kulungo nyi murna la kuro fenk ye connection o nyinki ndel jang we are 4 months behind payment to Senegal na tra nyin ka powership lem o bata le disconnecté bota ja
to ki so man to lolo
adu ni woketa nga mbe borika mbe kumbo kanja nyin kuran wala taala few hours few times a day ni wokata ja lummen na wala ndel fon balon because nyin kanyim project ko mil bek abi dulal be connect la up country abu ko do eteta bohol nin clean ne betebul ete ko be kombo be supply la bohol nin clean o sike no nyaadi janni bi da ko da ibe pombo dun la coral be kon e ka bohol le ka fo milka jio pombi ka wol siandi folo janni bi da coral be connect la jio la bari te bohol nin clean be bulu e ko be banko be fenkela so ndel be da men jan sante na manke ko tuti anen brikama wol fon la capacity jita man power plant wol soto jam so say nyaaji courant bi ta jam nga min sang Senegal bulu nga min sang ka powership bulu Senegal fa niaje wol be kono sotle ba wa filantelma because mol bina kan mi ang ilata o banko kam ibe la kodol tala iba dundi kanje ka kuran kije because ne la mo kodo ta ila million wol ya dundi banko kon ye power plant bilje ni wol mete joyte ila kodo kasara tale so wol buka sonka nati banko to mi yalon ko wol economy man tata ka anyama wala tinna Senegal am hani malikunda mburdala ni katela airport be do jele bulu bale be min lo kanje wala capacity si adante la janti mimbi jang sinya sabati woni milbe tama kanje woni won manke kilindi faw
do be kayar
but min di jahal World Bank nyum ko do min be dundi Gambia electrification o kono bari ko ko nyim power plant o be min lo kay kono wo pare da courant ko te kala problem woti man sakunda be min nyenta min commission lat they building a power plant right
they coming for Soma
is it for Jambur I mean there's one in Soma and Jambur right ko ba no pare da courant ko kala of the we'll have enough capacity
ni be la moy la baro la ni baro bala nyun ko fole ke la moy kugal because baro kamim daga America mim fo baro e ida wole ronta o ni a faya to buka understand kana mim fo mole abuka kala muta so malum munen fen ko baro kamim fo you have to be very careful nana nga mole baro lumen na be man fo le ari memba ka lumen na be madi jobate attaque fo janna da arrest la attaque wato men ka mal fo ba dolle na ka ko
muslim elders
ala mari jobade attaque wadu nali lamno recording na fanam fu akoni OMVG pareta Gambia la couranta be banna be min sot la OMVG ade tambila 50 megawatt la wa be ma ko la baraten na courant fenko na need ata nyakala Gambia be damen jan dan ko man tambi 300 megawatts la because courant bu fende mi yalon ko ni Gambia be urbanized kan mol bi na kan ne wuli kan sandol sato ko bina kan urban areas now we are close to 70% urbanization rate nin mol kana e kasula kura wala wonyale kura wala ni bi abe nyamente ni ba calculate la sama e ka kafule fana so be damen jante ni lafta kura wo ayente la msulata la nyamen ayenda ni be muta ni business wol nata ibe bode kan e kana kura kana manke kura da kana kolea ala capacity wala nyanda ka kafu be damen jang be sulala minna asiya batale investment o nyanda kake kabring beginning na kabring nyil nata watu mena ni along nyanta minkela ni wolong kabring 2017 nem nyanta ka start ka mirambe be kurangol fenkela nyamba lola nyamen bar nyil yomu neke e jekita nyile ka kapaoshi
anin Senegal
ago kola fana alaye mako e sinya killing watu min dafa e lafta ka killoja na tranum dolma mako e num del sonta ngo agreement o sign masibo min keta mol la nyin security port agreement o nyin agreement dol ngam fo Africa 50 nyin sikpa agreement o nyin seamless agreement o wol bina min kala mol lan wol fo be tambila wote
exactly
o mustokis company le wol lafta kanaja wole agreement o min ke gambe ko mutele
you see
barol tarla fa bina sign ala permanent secretary dol ani wol letter yo be negotiate ala na take modol ya jube hani during that time tambe du nyol ya file kana sign Amadou Sani ñol ya fayle kana sign amol danku akate bo sign la wol bank ñol yew kala mu dawato min na ning ADB wol letara e kay ko ne nyinke bela banko tinya
during wo keta wato min na I was at the ADB nga Amadou Sani commande nka Amadou kete nka don't sign this agreement Amadou min fanyente o fala jam because state secret bari Amadou commande nga fay Amadou banda ko no bari amam fienoje okay so foto dimo sign no min keta Senegal min be kerin jebi to mañol be min taka burka falling wala be kala lu jam wala na bi Samuel Sarr ñol yam te asoro Samuel Sarr ñolu ye Kayar itara Kayar ye solar power plant le commence le fakale jiro man nake inata gas fired power plant yola kenunje pour que generation ok o power plant 230 billion CFA yola dundije pour que wolo biri alo fo ay bandi ko no is 230 is 285 billion CFA et dem masa kunda agreement sign ko to le fem produce energy to je masa kunda basan and they are going to produce, in fact, I think they started from producing 300 megawatts of power Sawosang. So in the government when the agreement signed, because Sanji Mwani Lulu Niya every year, Masakunda Bejola 140 billion CFA. So the Lia power plant all for 230 billion. So Sanji Fulani Yadrom, Ibelakodo recover that. Sanji Fulani Yadel get 280 billion CFA. It's only 230 drone dunje. But Masakunda ni agreement signed by Jola for 25 years because that's So they have 23 years of profit. So be Senegal, the only try to renegotiate contract on you.
Yeah. West Africa Energy.
Coming from Malikunda.
Yeah.
Your contract on you di I think it's a French company or Turkish one. Yeah, in a solar farm low Malikunda. Well, I think they're producing for 300 megawatts.
My thing is, if individual businesses can produce 300 megawatts, because remember I told you as a country around that wobe in Sambanola, right? That are 300 ben Sambarano. Individual Malikunda fela science and yakumasiba bilka. Samuel Sarr no learning yinge sangamar. It was some few years back, like, bill, right? Kaya. Munat as a country, more was if a bill no in the country. Why?
But it requires proper planning and proper management.
Okay.
Because Samuel Sarr nyolta, yeminke, anime Malikunda, you take or pay projects.
Yeah.
Niye kurango, independent power projects, niye kurango doku. Ya tawo, ima tawo ibajola. So bi minka doku Kayar and minka doku Malikunda. Masakunda sulatala wo, yaman sulala wo iba sanna.
But if you like go off in Toldo
exactly.
Iko lo wafi Gambia.
Karadoka fi maja. Okay.
Min kumara nyindo kai at least wol kurango ila business all ni sulatala.
They have it. So right now, kabrin kana show kumasi. I have to tell them switch over to the power bank.
Yeah.
Because if not, every 5 minutes kurang kata.
But mimi problem wati Ousman name for signing. New contract money will find sign. Ikene fan tra problem bale kono ka finti ya koleya. Bi Senegal ba ta ka pour ka finti ko imam finti ko ko fair negotiate. Senegal fa nek ka pa wasotole.
Yeah.
So here ka power ship Senegal fana.
Okay.
Makilo fana sign. Ufana be lori jebi rotumo. They are trying to find a way to be stop. But difficult negotiations le be.
Yeah.
Because Nima Tanyama, you're going to end up in arbitration and if you're in the court could So these are poorly negotiated contracts.
So say as a country, you know, anytime I'm having you on the show, I see there's this particular person, I know, in fact, now respond, I go tell your ghost workers to be bold enough, the ghost writers to be bold enough, I want to say, yeah, you are bringing these people to come and paint a negative picture of our economy. So, and you know, but I know where it's coming because now one particular person, minuka safero okay, masakunda more dole biye, minuka safero okay, ni mo fenke abuka hawi kana fintina, but aka safero okay di ni aka safero. Kami intenga safero okay le kana ko yes factory we know agenda. You bring it. I think abuka hawi one paragraph safero na fawa, but I know where it's coming from. So it's like, you know, when we speak like this, people think we are build painting a negative picture, but we are just reality of Mimbe caring. It's scary.
A beautiful for 2026.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Drug dealing, drug the kind of information you get scared to even say it. I was telling a friend yesterday, information on me as a journalist, I'm scared to even discuss this with anybody. It's kind of scary. And but I keep every day story mo you draw ko na fenkolto biba mo ko magistrate carry wala fang arrest ya mo ko na people at the VIP lounge wala nyanta new drug culture. What has our country turned into?
We have that kind of information. This is
yeah.
Bring the countries in debt distress.
Yeah.
CD Keita you'll be balance.
Foreign Minister Kilomo, CD Keita. Atela manta last week, President la Toto. Kafoko ha President Jan develop le teninte a lot I mean for ye last week.
And I mean for national woman killing that.
You know, I'm killing it.
I'm killing.
You know,
I'm
killing. But eco development of Minke Africa mo market yo. Because
never see by taking Carole Keka is a momo in Gambia jam. A maribe combo jane or football on one football yaninka. So it a balu. B. A sonata neaning kunum compare. You know, Ninko kunum be few years back. Like neani will compare. Balu be a sonata bilepang fa dina you know fa sonata kunun. Yen in Kawan.
Bring out on the memo answer. So finally, Mr. Dr. Gajigo, what do you think? I know in reality model ka balane because maybe I'll come in for ko negative picture le malafi mole scale malafi because governments, that's how governments operate. Dunia karobela, they don't want people to know the reality. Because ngajala Senegal kabiri nyingo masakunda na ata nyingo so bondi former government ka fo nyimman fe hani makisal fo stendo bondi ko ale bankola rating jindikan, you know, these are not good ten because Sonko former minister Ousman Gajigo kafara bakai ko kabiri na before they took over back ko some of these numbers nka inflate so that we get the loans and grants lafta minna international partners will prune na fenko. So governments naturally they do this, right? The reality hide molia because he malafika more panic me or ilafta ka confidence sort of from the international partners. This is something that we know kakakele, right? In a lot of government setups. Now, but I know also they will listen. They will listen to people like you in their quiet moments and say, you know what? Even though malafaya for barakamim for tonyalo. Sineke kanyenta mune kela kanyin turn around. The truth is, I believe he's not the right person for this job. But what does he need to do to change things around? We cannot continue like this.
No, problem mantra ministry level too. As at the level of the head.
It's a policy.
No. Nyatonko, bankola nyatonko. Jumale sidi kede nada, ama fanada fanke minister.
Barola ya nati.
Barola ya fanke akiji. Adu wole nyanta kanyita ndiya la kafaye ko.
Na policy direction.
Labda, you know, mansakunda nyanta katama tenda, economy nyanta katama tenda.
Okay.
A mantra tamaka nyama. So nin siri ke dabe sirinje hani bi oto mi ya sindije abe sirinje wala fenkola wala because he's serving at the president's pleasure.
Koto problem o boto old.
The problem o amantra sidiketa ya amantra Ibrahima Silla ya amantra minister Kliya abe president Barole so mo nyanda ka Barole nyininka Barole nyanda si ka fa nyininka.
Thank you.
Ite be sirinje so nyimin bitaka ite ya mira bitaka anyama le banyi economy bitaka anyama le pamanda ka anyama ye ko de nyamenten fo ite fa wala tele ko bitaka anyama fo nyimil be information o dikele be min dikela ni be kering fo te ya mira be mu clineti ba because atebe damen science baro fo be lamin to ateta lonno la min be kering banko ka
Baro bota marché to.
no wala baro to ni mo ni ka bi mburo mu jolle
Yo last time fu baro man tanu baro man fintino ko man boto mu fenkolti mo be ko mu fa yeah I mean because I don't blame him, he doesn't go.
Exactly.
Ni na te kai he Mr. President man boto data teninte not finta bolo fulo because he trusts those advisors
Yes.
and those technocrats minu ka fay.
anyanta wala lonna so atel lota watu min nafa ko mole ko ning ndella jang kurawo be siari kurawo be betiari na siata fonka machine dol fa ato fo watu min
Ha.
dole nyata na la ka ko indama naata be sirim bi amalon ko komin wole min fay ani min be kerin sa make kilindi na molo atel nyato ko ya aman timma
Go alo diamol do.
ha
Abe steering labe diamola. Ako kuramol siyatale fona dol fa club kuramo far.
Ako
Kuran fa fe.
so ni benya mente yeah so the, be min foka asikeno amalo ibe min foka but by now kudol bigi ajanta ka lonne ko mi nyile min fonye ani min be kering amaka kilindi wala karola generation capacity la karola ani fenjama la karola
Yeah.
ni te hani sayete mo wolong ete ya mira ko nyelka min foye wala be kering worete man ite ma moso de be min blame na man ke famoti so nyimbe dame science nyim problème o amantra minister la level to amantra ministry la level to president problème o nyim ne banko la nyaton ko wala nyant wala ka minister ko man ay to mo ay sindi jate le dol bondi je mimbe jani sidi bina dol be je
ah fine.
jani o fana bina dol fana biji ay wol be fale so atele si wol falinno so nim economy mantra taka anyata tala nyame agriculture mantama anyata tamala nyame infrastructure mantama anyata tamala nyame wo minister si blame no because it fana manke di no de mo me force ka sije bare min yalo atel responsibility banko e min katio fa e min sindije wala la
The
responsibility
buck stops with the president.
Exactly.
Yes. But niya jube. Ning aya tara barobe kul kala nyam. Ate Amadou Bonde Jeno abodi jawar Amadou Sane. But Amadou Sane na la fait ko do spend Amadou kan in tembul te spend no la ten. Na transport politique bi go sura tan la pour ko do save.
Yeah.
Akon ko do spend Amadou kay ko haninta kenol sa ko di tembul. Wala man dia wala na Amadou Bonde nun je. Ay Mamboure Ndiaye sama na je. Wala Mamboure Ndiaye sa bonni je ay sid sama na. To we are going from bad to worse. Bi membe ke kanyim banko kan Adama Barrow ko tele information so nyim banko beti is the most informed
High
person.
Wolf, yeah.
So tumbe ke kanyim banko ka kala mutale. Am haba tandile o ba amo hatile wala problem odi. Bi kurangol so to bala nyim banko kan na lafta lon aka kata mid people stole every now and then. Nyinta no problem on bije. Ase mol ngin kanole ase bidi people to wato ase ni karol kena sin kiskirol kena salonne nimbe kere isa kata kama boma banna la talonna abalon nale
Yeah.
domoro la kolea anyanta wolon nale kurangol soto balia anyanta lon nale na dinu ka fel karam moto wato wade aka moyle de pos ka finti la kala asa wona dinu ka fel wade efri ka $5 billion to the education wona dinu ka fel anyanta wolon nale munati nambika mano na manis import abika talafa kafsa wasa kafule mano da bika jifaka kafulu nga tax breaks dila muna no kake munati na dinole fara l'hôpital ta ni su kono mal ni fonkol wati wati nga ko do dum di jele $2 billion every year muna no kake asol be nyinin kanole munati na bi nyim banko kan sirol mi bedda da kay bika tinyati nyala wati kili muna nakani ko duba ndi ko sila da daro na lafta na be nyinin kanole barni Adama Barrow fango sita first thing ay man kaman kunda swolo ye mune fo ntega mingje ngamin kare ko $29 million o bota mi asita nya betana chief justice so kan ay wota asita nya ko $200 million ben account kono in 5 years Obutami.
Okodoka bomuntu. Ite wo president woto. Ite okodoka bomuntu.
So nite o manyalla banko ila ministre nyaba. Okay, maran sa kenole. So wala sunya running corruption ning tilembalia ning incompetence ka fondi banko ka. Min president sita e silo itandi mo wala mo be telinale.
But at least say corruption
So,
o kala kan. Ngaje be fingi sambakan kitiola. Aba sambakan kitiola and then the Ministry of Health officials all fanang
audit report jele fin daja. E mo jele samba na mak abati. Ani wo. Aba fana samba amon sanjo fo siya pa din yabula.
on fengi ha.
Ama ba minke tourism development area jam fa fa wala board wala denounce parliament. Muna kataje? Nothing. Aba sanya mbiri ay company local fa contrat ko dia fan daje. Muna kataje?
Bai bata sambakan korsa aba.
But not for that. Okay? Milbe local government offices nyol to jana. Chonga nyula ni all those people miro tinya roke nyama ni India te. Una dem on the investigation bi. Una still for see sonko be embassy to. Una no be on the investigation bi. But ye better dit tinya roke ko yak yemi ke jokayen se mot ngi sawndi. Bi chonga ngam fu chonga re yol samba banjul BCC bi re ndol ex. Mi sunya roke fo ala na tambire. Yo samba masa konko ngamire. Do fa day sunya ko jabondi ka ite mo roje. Come on, let's be serious.
Nyiro ke niaje mo samba niaje mo samba code bitun coming corruption la carola isalo woman political support le soto je o amang kumaya politics la carola warang wala the evidence nying is so strong comme Dr. Banjala Carola mi alon ko recording bije o ite mabuno la ita ko confuse ni no la molia evidence je le o sipa le kata bar mol be alon ni corruption min be nyim bangu yalla jambe la tamo min dare jamme ate ka ke
afadama
ni ba sunya ka tele isa kenu
bari
na
abesoron
bari sai min be kerin jambala firi mo man silang barola because ya jele min ka kije nyaton kol min be ke kanja e be yim bungulo kan yin fajara jam mo malo million jolle ka dunje akodo ka bo mun tole mo malo
ni be sarari ka funyo mamosi
ela kodo mi alon ko ite tarno la president yala famo ela ela nyim business o be nyim kodo be generate la mo malon aka generate nyaabe ela amount nyim minkal ela korra min banka man kunda abe lokan fen ko men mo mala kodo be bokam mun tole
ako goodwill do so lewlo
ako don ko min ya jamela tamo na ako alala bank yalo nyinata wala le sa because nyim fana mo another way of saying that lady so some mimbe kerin saying not only corruption o siata mole man silam fon isa ke no doye ya ke fawoye bala firingo nyi wole siata bankoka min diate yake say wala tin nyi corruption o min fon be ke kanja wala tin fa sembo fon si wara tambi min kata ya jamela ta
yes because wala tin na constitution kutume ya samanante baro draft wala tin na integrity chapter bondi je iko ninga sita mansi ni du na masa kunda mimbe bulisa declare but
ni bola ndafo
teji ninkala
exactly
so if you sunya ni ubitala wrong ko mu resi la fandole la ko sunya ka
scary
so even for wrong the buck stops with the president tinyaro be kuruya be barole sontala ninga masonga be banale so mo ne be kala jere wala nga falling na falen Gambia di wala sindi ne fe ko ala akaji ala man jina na carte faye
Ismail Sise ko jani 12 of 2026 before 12 ba fala wi baro wato banda Ismail ako 2026 before 12 ba fala wi baro
before 12 so fintira what is clear
ako ba fala wi baro
at least ya ujubi
Ismail Sise ka min kunu ngana ka min fo bi ne compare Ismail Sise mi mamera monya
ako diaspora ako mo min be ka diamu diaspora jobless people patanyo pata piyo ako le jobless people leti many in the do ko wala ko baro criticize because we are in the baro ni keka
I will discuss for because it's a waste of time.
I mean that's what he said.
You can be more like but
that's a doctor, he's a state minister and he's also a PhD holder. That's the scary part, Dr. Wato Wandale, it's always good to have you guys. Sometimes it's good to have these frank conversations, picture paint of what is bankobe nyami. I mean, tobe mbe kata marse tole, mbe ka depensol bondile na suol kono. Molbe yeah jele mimbe caring but fanan kanying conversation also to I mean, I think Masakunda Molo ministry to even though they fly finti jam sifalu bari me I found the realistic picture of what is happening in the country. Hopefully they will learn from this and also try to turn things around. No, we don't. Honestly, it's scary.
Nkabin fo wala banko na banko man tataku kan ni man fere ka abe tunen nare nka wala ni fan tunen tare bar pour kana si putu mero kono duma ali ga fere ka banko kanande nka fo wala kam ka si ke la banko kanyum bo fu jaman dia moye bari fasi fo ni nga man fo man falling ko le yaro nabi fatu countries like Greece in Europe ani sembo min sutani economy bije Greece na fo Greece tinyata ñim façon les gris tiñanu ye kulu mabo tiñaro be kan mabo ye ka julol min tay ka mabo min te bulu ko be bulu yewo fe mabo wala be Ousmane Sonko ñol sita ya ke Sénégal ko bravo very good hanata retimbe jila bari si to nya fintindi ko banko sambala nya Greece man tanu la han kabi they are still struggling because you fandi yalita ye wala la ñoka ya mabo fu banko boyta ni Greece bo ñaw sa kon tolu jangambie nintol boyta mo batande so nga to nyafo ñoy nga banko fere ke fu banko si boñu kole ya kono janni nga belan na tambila so Gambia de on lewo Gambia de on lebulo batam be kam mo be yalo e fayele a jube mi yalon ko kuno si ngona dampo mi yana fa kuno e wolon to nyaala Gambia dul fana jube faye ye fere ke falen de yani stulere
msaga yo programme wat
to nyaala de nyinde e buga nyim abono ne a lumbina fa finte akeda Senegal akeda Mozambique Africa banko akanyim fu Greece ya adunga finte wato menna ika bori dimingo menna wato le fa kane diming wato menne ma expect wato menna wato la fa so nyi wokay bedame banko e min need wolem ko not only nyaton ko mo be masakunda nyanta lonna ita manda masakunda kana nafulu nyinola ila to nafulu nyinola ta private sector ta business oil masakunda do ko min nyinenka banko la nyato ta damal nyata le ko kono ila wulo ni wulta ila larankan yela ya dendi ko dungi tara office odo mimbe banko sambala nyato damal nyata le e hakilo bar ni bo keka a Kenya ana fo man ke kilindi me min je kanye banko kan wala diamote bar mimbe keka masakunda mi yalon ko itela taka masakunda samba nyato ni mosi family buko sidi njanyon Dr. Ismaila Cissé ñol Mamoud Sabal ñol Njogu Ba ñol mo miliyalon ko kiskisro ketal ya je mil manyanna ko kela mile korsono ke miliyalon ko ye banko fawtinya banko la nyaato ta mandre hakilo kono ite wolta dan ko don wolbete support kan ye palaso di wala state house faw ite ka nyita ni molla ite banko e kam minfo ani be min ke ka manki client so molbe nyanta ka o je nyaalale baro anin diamo amanke kilinti
so ba jela do nga want lasting do mol ba jelale mi yentol ni NPP fata yalo baro yala tobande nga sama la baban gata tola sam sinindi semba suba ya dota ndeni dia ndola ndeni mari ko ide apple president tata banku yayo banku yayo bara banko ni constitutional mandate let atol kata president ko ma singo ko ma mun la atol fanan ngoya baroka kan fatul kamana la leader pero tata la tola tata banku dingol sa jibe ay mini be bulo ko ya fay atol kata barono mo munela amon nalam fa alka bita ngone aji intente na le siloka anna be ben siloka ne tenno no be ben siloka
tenno hani atiba ko atibina ka atol bitaka
to ngani plan le birin January sonto la nga plan le birin January so sayenen nga pamito nyinen ka meta ye iban pamito di mol ntol kata minna ele kata sawosan lisinya kili usenu birin 2021 amanta na la mole nyoje son kata le kata banko ka itandi banko la ning UDP sita mbe minkela anen yulbe men ne fata nyamen ka itandi mol katum bata tambitale ko le ya tambita nyem banko kan misali banko dune singa kacha hey ntol nyine be mbulu min sita 2026 mbe nyine kela masa kunda yanta nyine kela nyenke make banintul sita mbe nyine kela tawl tandi mola niye kacha ko wala altule mun miraje nsi mun kafuno nyinto nsi mun falin no jansi because to na plan ol beri dal fu ngam bandi to manta sira for 2020
iko dal fan kel ko man sakunda silan sal ka nyine ni mbaro stemi do bon ali abon ni mbaro to tola ali ta to
the government in waiting
ko ya ko ka to kam far gal kam
to sila Gambia bi ngolun to do ko la wole useru dabo 27 28 29 years aba no kilingo to mo mo si so to bi fo lama abe ku kilingo to abe consistent as consistent as the North Star amambo anota yekube lakan abe kelo la jimbanko e doro ni mo ta fa mbara sa mboto fa ngam fonyo bari hani as long as Gambia man falling ate fonyo so nkata wala ka tande banko la mo ne be keri ko la be tembe jumale to mbe sila ba fo banko e tune ngay bang be nga foba fonsi ku keno la sayamba na nyimbanko falling to kata wa tolel mo le kachake
okay
Ali Falk free consultants.
Free consultants. Tell me this would have cost millions of dollars. But you gave them a lot of free consultancies. I just hope they learn from this, honestly. Yeah. But it's always good to have you guys here and just give an outlook of what is happening in our country, because we cannot just always rely on what government is giving us, but also have independent people to tell us what is happening in the country. Divergent views, especially when it comes to our economy. But I think this time, the Minister of Finance be kankilin, by be distress le kono so atol meta fola janabar bi afon ya fonyel oto ngamira mobe saje ko kol bola nyama hopefully they will come up with ways that can change things around, because inflation are still at 9% is still high when countries be kumboka 2% more be kumboka. Ntenin that grocery store in American cover bari kusai America koleata, but will be 2% le. Imagine jam told me be 9%. Untola earning power benyami. Yeah, and untola earning power benyami. To be honest, kolea cool koleatare, and I hope ko masakunda molu understand ko we are talking from people as people me an ko nka spend le. Nka kodo bon le nka dépense ul bondi. Kuno ni ka dalasi kemelu le ke dépense de bibe wuli kilne bondika. And femo be double tale. So one feneti me alon ko is the reality, and I hope they do something quickly about that. Thank you very much, Dr. Gajigo and Manneh. Always great having you on the show, and it's always great listening to you guys. And this is not painting a negative picture of the economy, but it's giving you a realistic view of what our economy is. Until we come next week, inshallah. Tune into our show on Monday. The Constitution We Want is a new show that civic education show me on Konkake by the constitutional gathering bita table kanne. We are telling the people so that they have enough knowledge. They can engage their National Assembly members. Constitutional kono. That is a civic duty. Me along kanyanta kela le bankudingo be along munebe constitutional kono. Bari bankudingo ta ngode alenu. But mansakunda nate tade da sai munebe kono pur bankudingo le along every Monday akanale at 5 o'clock. I'll be back on Monday and obviously Thursday. Now I do 2 shows a week. It's crazy, but it's just for here against the tabling of the new budget. See you again. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
We are happy to announce the launch of our new logo. We have evolved since our incorporation in 1997, and it is time to refresh our new look to reflect who we are today. Before I reveal our new look, however, walk with me while I take you through our journey of the last 25 years. Trust Bank was incorporated on July 3rd, 1997 and began operations on October 1st, 1997. Following the collapse of the parent company of its predecessor, Meridian, the CBG stepped in and recapitalized the bank and held the shares in trust, thus the name Trust Bank. In 1999, the first investors who responded to the IPO and paid $1.50 per share received their maiden dividend of 50 bututs per share. In 2000, the bank fully paid back